Welcome to the Fort Collins Fellas podcast. From Colorado State University to New Belgium Brewery and the hundreds of miles of hiking and biking trails, Fort Collins has earned its well-deserved reputation as one of the top places to live in the United States. Your hosts, Patrick and Chris, were born and raised in Fort Collins. Patrick owns and runs Soukup Real Estate Services, a top-rated real estate brokerage company here in Fort Collins. Chris is the co-owner of the Murphy Whitlock Group, a top-rated residential mortgage broker based out of Fort Collins. Now join the fellas as they uncover the stories, places, and people that make Fort Collins so exceptional.
Hey everybody, Chris Murphy here with Patrick Soukup, Fort Collins Fellas. We've got a little something different we're doing this week. We're actually recording it about a week before it comes out, end of the third week of August of 2024. As you know, Patrick Soukup has his own real estate brokerage here in town. I run a small little mortgage broker operation here in town with my business partner, Joe. So we're very hands-on in the real estate world. And we figured we'd give a little update to our listeners, to our viewers. With that being said, if you are listening on the podcast, maybe you can't get onto the YouTube channel, but I got some really cool charts that I'm going to show here to begin our conversation. Patrick's got some information on the NAR settlement that is actually kicking in tomorrow, August 17th, I believe. Do I have that right?
Well, it's official August 17th, but pretty much
everybody's already doing it. So a lot's happened in the last couple weeks, and we just figured this was a good time to do it. Coming up, we're going to have Ann Hutchinson come on from the chamber, talk about some items on the ballot in November. And we just got word, Patrick, I don't know if I've told you this yet, but Dawn Downs, who is running for district attorney in Larimer and Jackson counties, has agreed to come on the podcast.
All right. Some politics.
We'll have a little politics, some ballot stuff, district attorney. We'll see if she wins. But before we start, quick little note. So I had an agent 2 days ago. I won't say her name, obviously, anything like that, but she does a good amount of business. And she emailed Joe and I saying it has come to a standstill in her market. And she feels like it's 2008. I've hear a lot of that. Maybe that's a little bit over the top, but
she's here in Northern Colorado.
She's here in Northern Colorado, and she's great. She's been around a long time. She's not like new to the industry. So it's starting to definitely slow down. And Patrick, as I get ready to pull up these charts, I'm just curious your thoughts, what you're seeing. I mean, you've had the YouTube channel, this market, quite frankly, better than anybody. And I'd love to hear where you think we are in this current cycle.
I would say we've had fewer reach outs over the last probably 3 to 4 weeks. To be expected, there is a summer lull, especially last 2 weeks before school starts. People go on their trips, vacations. They're focused on getting the kids ready for school. Home buy-in's the last thing on their mind. So there is some seasonality that is expected during this time. I think there's lots of different factors that are playing into it. I think political uncertainty has some sort of pause button for some. I think interest rates, whether they're going to go down like they're the expectations are, so people are pushing pause, or if they're going to go up, but still affordability is an issue. So people aren't like super stoked about buying a house. So I think that there's some. And then there's this NAR settlement that we'll talk about here shortly too, that I think whether you're a buyer or seller, it's kind of like, hey, what does this mean? What's it going to do? So I think there are a lot of different factors that are contributing to this feel of slowness. Mm-hmm. And I think our team's feeling it. We've got, multiple listings that are live right now that are not getting a ton of activity, but they're getting some. Other houses on the market are just kind of sitting a little bit. Our buyers are having great negotiation opportunities right now. So I think overall it's just an interesting time, but I think the next few weeks will be very telling.
I agree with everything you said. I think everybody knows the Fed is cutting in September. We had somebody just back out of a deal 2 or 3 days ago on inspection. because they think that rates are coming down and they're going to get a better deal in like 2 months. They're not waiting 6 months. They're literally like, hey, I think we can wait a couple more months to get a better deal.
Yeah.
Crazy. So I think there's a lot of market timing going on. I 100% agree. Just the uncertainty around the election. When Biden was in the race, I think it was, Trump was just going to walk right in. It's all changed with Harris, Vice President Harris coming in. But let's, I think I'm just going to start off with this one, Patrick. And I think this kind of sums up pretty clearly the where we've been in the housing market, at least in the mortgage industry on my side of things. But this is mortgage applications to buy a house going all the way back to the early 90s. And mortgage apps, lowest level since 95. And really, it's been kind of bouncing around that bottom, call it, for the last year and a half. Pretty amazing. If you're a chart person, you got to figure it's finding support right now. And obviously refinances. These are just to buy a house. So these aren't even refinances. But anyways, I think that just tells you a little bit where we are in the overall housing market. Right.
Yeah.
Here.
I mean, I think what we've been telling our sellers and the feel that we have as far as buyers go is there are fewer out there, but they're very strong buyers and very discerning. They're picky, they're choosing. And so there's people that are absolutely active. It's just not a lot of them, but the ones that are very, very able and willing to buy.
Yeah, I agree. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's hard to see, but that was a huge drop. That was obviously COVID right there, COVID, and then just springboarded right back up. And then has come down. A couple others I got
on that. What I would point out on that is, one of the things that people talk about is this is just another, 2008, right? Well, no, because look at the mortgage applications in 2004, 5, and 6, which is what led to the 2008 crash. Exactly. You had people who weren't able or capable of paying a mortgage, applying and getting mortgages. And look at the 2020 numbers. I mean, you're talking about, what is that? That's over 150 less per. So that's what is that? 20, that's 30% fewer mortgage applications in the 2020 to 2022 than there were in the 2004 to 2007. So that's during that 2020 to 2022 time period are very able buyers. So,
what's interesting too is the dot-com crash in 99 didn't really affect mortgage applications. If you look back over the market, you've had the 99 crash, you had the 08 financial crash, COVID crash, you could call. There's other bear markets in there, but no real damage. I mean, nothing really got affected by the dot-com.
I think if there was to be a crash for the mortgage applications, the title would be affordability crash.
Yeah, exactly. Patrick, next one for you here. U.S. new single-family homes for sale. So new construction on the market. And you had mentioned you were at TrueMark, you said recently?
Yeah, at TrueMark. And also we talked with Landmark as well in the last couple of days. And, they're very much at a standstill for sales. So, with new construction, it's a great opportunity right now to go in there and talk and negotiate. You can get some pretty decent deals and packages, but they're feeling it too.
And as a mortgage broker, I can tell you right now, there are some amazing offers on those preferred lenders. I've told a couple of people, I go, just take it and run with it. Like one was given $100,000 in incentives.
I remember you saying that.
No, it was a $1.5 million purchase, but still $100,000 in incentives to buy down rate, cover closing costs. But here we are, highest since 2008. Speaking of 2008, new single family homes for sale, highest. And I mean, look at that. That low was in 2012. You got a little pullback from COVID, but it has gone straight up.
I'll do the starts next. I think is important to look at.
Oh, you know what? I have this. Do I have the starts charts? Those are rates.
If you don't have the starts. The comment that you were making that.
So just this morning. So we're recording on Friday, August 16th. Housing starts hit the lowest in 50 months. So it came out this morning. I think it was like right around 1.25 million. I'm going to have more info on that on Joe and I's weekly market update. But new housing starts lowest in 50 months. as of this morning.
Which is, really, it kind of gets down to, again, supply, right? Supply is, we've got about a 5 million, I think it's 5 million, or is it 5 or 6 million home shortage that.
Oh, it's in the millions. I thought it was like maybe 3 million last, but I could be off on that by a little bit.
But so that comment, that there's a million or so starts versus, annualized. So it would, it's just going to be super tough for the inventory to catch up to what the actual demand is. And even with those type of levels. So it's just an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And builders are going to be the first to be as afraid of anybody, because they do have 2008 and 9 wasn't that long ago. And there were a significant amount of builders that folded during those years because they just had inventory on their hands and debt services to pay. And
what do you think about, and not to get too political here, but Vice President Harris' proposal to give $25,000 incentives to first-time home buyers? And full disclosure, as a pretty much lifelong Democrat, my first thought was, have we not learned anything from putting trillions of dollars into the market?
Yeah,
I understand the idea of like, hey, we want to help first-time home buyers, but man, you give 25 grand to a bunch of young first-time home buyers. That's not the solution. You're just going to have values go. I don't know. It's not even going to get passed. First of all, it won't even go through. But the thought of even doing it just makes me so nervous. Like, oh my gosh, I can just see home values going up. That's part of the reason we have this inflation thing going. So, anyways, but while you're thinking about that, I'm going to pull up my last chart, Patrick.
Yeah, go for it.
And this, speaking of inflation, CPI, Consumer Price Index. Okay, you see these data points in the news. Here's a breakdown. This is what the CPI consists of, and this is year over year change. Leading the charge, motor vehicle insurance, up 18% year over year. That has been a huge, and you could throw in here owner's equivalent rent of primary. These two, as I'm kind of pointing at my screen that nobody can see, those are big components of the CPI. They're weighted. I think almost the owner's equivalent rent and the rent of primary residence is like 35% of this number. So it's very big. So the 5% moves does impact it. But this is what they look at every single month, at the lowest, used cars and trucks. You're looking to buy used, get your mortgage first and then go buy your car. But yeah, down 10.9%. Airfare is down. And if you average it all up, all items, the most recent CPI, 2.9%. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts on this? Anything jump out at you?
I just, the personal level, figuring out freaking hospital services and doctor's expenses, dude, crazy. I mean, we pay $1,500 a month for my family for health insurance. We're on a silver plan.
Yep.
We don't have any financial help as far as from the government or, subsidies or whatever. But if I go to it's essentially, and then it's like, basically our deductible is, I think it's $8,000 per person, like 15,000 or 16,000 or 10,000 or something like that for a family. I went to the emergency room, $4,000, and I was in there for like an hour. And I'm like,
dude,
what am I paying? What am I paying insurance for? I mean, like, so that's just on a personal level. I'm like, that is still not figured out. That's for sure. And as far as buying a house and getting subsidies, I think having systems that like aren't putting huge burdens on family.
Yeah.
When I ran properties for, 10 years, as far as like on the management side, we wouldn't even look at medical collections because it was just so prevalent among young people. And, if we're gonna help people buy a house, the first thing we got to do is take away the shovel from the hole that they're digging. And
yes.
There's things that we can fix on other sides rather than, hey, you guys have all of these other expenses, credit cards, school, medical bills, whatever. Let's latch on a $500,000 house and incentivize you to do that. So puts a little bit of a fear mentality on people, like, I've got to do it, otherwise I might miss out on it, aka cash for clunkers, aka the $8,000 first time home buyer credit. There could have been a lot of people who maybe shouldn't be buying, but felt the FOMO of not taking advantage of that. So I think there's some things that we need to take care of and address first before we do that. But obviously, I'm a huge believer in home ownership as far as equity and net worth and stability of life. But I feel like I'd rather them go through, like, have to graduate maybe a years long class of financial literacy and
absolutely. Like, you have 3 kids. I got a young, like, I'm going to teach this kid is going to learn about like how money works, credit cards. How does that work?
Yeah.
Compounding interest. Yes. Owning, like, it boggles my mind when I talk to some people on the phone and I'm just like, I don't think you should be buying a house, let alone whatever you're doing.
It's great. And I think that $25,000 would be, you'd put some gas on a fire that doesn't need to be,
absolutely
there. So I like the idea. I'm like, yeah, let's help people get in because of affordability.
Totally.
But let's figure out a better way.
Just pour it out. All right. I'm going to hand it over to you to NAR. That's obviously the big news right now. I know you've been doing a lot of work on it, and I know our listeners and viewers would love your take on NAR.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing, I think I'm excited. Because I think
excuse me, you're excited, Patrick. This is horrible for the industry. I heard this is going to be the worst thing in the world.
I think there will be a leveling up of the industry, a required leveling up of the industry, or get the heck out of there. And I think that's what's exciting, is because it is an industry that feels inflated in the sense of like being overpaid and anyone can do it. Well, yeah, that's truth. I mean, it takes 168 hours, a few $1,000 to take tests and get your license going and join a company that's basically like pleading to get you into their brokerage.
Yep.
And because there was no risk really on their side per se, besides, taking a cut from your commissions. Whereas now I feel like there's going to be hard questions specifically on the buyer side, right? Because I think on the seller side, the listing side, there's always been a communication of value. The listing agent is going to come in there, have a meeting with you. Real quick before I dive into that, the changes that happened, if you are watching this and are not aware of what happened, is essentially there was a class action lawsuit that sued the National Association of Realtors along with some other very big brokerages.
Many states involved in this. There was multiple states.
It was a national type deal. Essentially what happened was they were saying that there is like collusion, antitrust type stuff, that the industry had a set
agents steering their buyers to certain properties.
Yep. So what ended up happening was the NAR and others settled, suggesting that, hey, we're not going to agree that we're guilty here, but what we will do is make some changes throughout the industry. And it's expected, because it's still not necessarily signed, although all of the changes are taking place today, essentially yesterday, today, and tomorrow are kind of the 3 days where MLSs are making those changes. But essentially the big changes are this. There's no longer the ability to market a cooperating brokerage compensation to buyers. So while, yes, listing agents and sellers can still offer a cooperating brokerage compensation, it cannot be marketed on the MLS. I'll get into that, what that means here shortly.
Yep.
Then one of the second biggest things that happened was, one of the things was, there was a huge hundreds of millions of dollars of settlement fees. But the next big thing that happened was individuals must have a brokerage, buyers, essentially to show property, you have to have a buyer agreement signed of some sort. And I'm going to jump into the two forms, kind of like the actual practicality of how this has changed in Colorado, because that's what's wild is each state is handling this different about how they're going about it, how they're going to respond. And, the Colorado Association of Realtors, the Department of Regulatory Agencies for Colorado, I mean, all of these are involved and it can get very much muddy. And I would say over the next 6 to 12 months, there's going to be kind of a reckoning of how people are doing business, best practices. And that's not to suggest that, hey, there's going to get back to a collusion per se, but it's going to say, hey, generally speaking, the sellers aren't going to offer anything. And a buyer's going to have to come in there and negotiate, any or no commissions, and or maybe all, sellers are offering a little bit and then the buyer broker is going to have to come in and negotiate the rest. So there'll be a lot of changes over the next 6 months, but I want to jump into the actual formality, the two forms that are really kind of like, if you're buying in Colorado, these are going to be the two biggest changes that you'll have seen versus if you bought even a week ago.
Insert ad right here, and we'll be right back. No.
Yeah. All right. So let's start with, there we go. We'll start with the contract. Okay. So basically Colorado has a very buyer-friendly contract. So, I've always talked about that with my clients, but there's a paragraph 29. Sorry, I wasn't already there.
No, it's all right. While you're going now, you got it right there. I got a story.
So paragraph 29 is essentially what is going to take place of what the cooperating brokerage compensation was. Because while, yes, you were able to negotiate it with your buyer, with the listing agent, generally speaking, it wasn't too heavily negotiated because the listing agent had already negotiated a preset commission that they were going to offer, whether that be 3%, 2.8%, 2.5%, 1%, that could have been all over the board. And the theory was that all buyer's agents were getting 3% all the time. And I would say maybe at the beginning of my career, 10, 12 years ago, yeah, that was probably true. But over the last probably 5 to 6 years, that number has gone anywhere between 2 to 3%. But now that is no longer going to be the case. While yes, the seller and listing agent could negotiate kind of a preset agreed upon commission that they're going to pay. And it's going to be up to the buyer agent to call that listing agent and say, hey, are you guys offering any cooperating brokerage compensations? Yes, great. What is it? Okay. And then you can come to paragraph 29. When you're submitting your offer, your buyer agent, essentially all four parties now, because there's 4 parties to a transaction, generally speaking, the buyer, the seller, the listing agent, and the buyer's agent. And all 4 parties are going to be signing this agreement, essentially saying, this is what the buyer agent is going to get paid. And each buyer agent is going to have a negotiated price with their buyer and or how they're going to go about that. But you could go either that the percent of the purchase price or a flat dollar rate is going to be paid by the seller.
Question for you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Do you think on higher price homes, you're going to see a flat rate more often than a percentage?
I think it's going to be all over. The biggest thing is going to be, where is your value? Like, where do you think the value is and worth? And I would say, I told you a story yesterday that it's cost versus value.
Yeah.
And yes, do I think a $10 million house should pay somebody $300,000 and on one side and $300,000 on the other side?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Right.
But I will say, the one thing that's super interesting about this is nothing new to commercial agents. They've been negotiating their fees for ever. And,
Correct. Yep.
It was absolutely, I was talking with a commercial agent just last week, and he was talking about a $9 million deal for a piece of land that he'd be getting paid close to $275,000 for commissions. And it was a position of value that it wasn't even a conversation. Like, that's what that was worth to that deal. So I don't know. I do think there's going to be fluctuations all over the place. I think
I think so too.
I think there's going to be agents that like, hey, I'm just going to churn deals. I'm going to add zero value. If you want me to, I'll write you a contract and I'll set you an inspection and I'm going to walk away from there and the rest is on you, buddy. And, I'm going to charge, 1% to do that, or I'm going to charge, $5,000 or whatever that is. And then there's going to be people that are going to be like, dude, absolutely not. You're buying a $750,000 house. Like, sure, I'm going to get paid $21,000, but isn't that a little bit more important than potentially buying a $750,000 house that has a main sewer line that's broken, structural issues, a cloud on the title, and a next door neighbor that is slated to be rebuilt into a fourplex? There's cost and there's value.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. All right, keep going. So we got the paid by the seller. Perfect.
Paid by the seller. This is going to be paid by the buyer or paid by a separate agreement between the buyer brokerage and the seller's brokerage firm. So again, the seller's brokerage firm could negotiate with the listing agent like, hey, I definitely think we should be paying buyer's brokerage something. What should we pay them? Oh, okay, 2%. I called up that listing agent. They said, we're going to recommend 2%. I put in 2% here.
Yeah.
That says, the listing brokerage is going to pay me because they've already agreed upon that. But hey, for the next part, if I've already had an agreement with my buyer that, hey, listen, we charge 3% and absolutely we're worth it. We're going to be saving you thousands of dollars now and have a value proposition that will make complete sense. So they're going to give us 2%, but then, hey, we're also going to ask for an additional percent from the seller to accumulate to our 3%. So
okay. So you can do a combination of those.
Yes, you can do a combination. You can do 1, 2, 3, or none. I mean, if you're like, dude, I'm just your buddy, I would never recommend that because I think
that's a good buddy right there.
It's a good buddy. But then the next deal that changed, let me see if I can get this.
So while you're pulling up the next one, I got a story I read yesterday. It was, I think the video was going viral. Real estate agent, his buyer did not realize what he signed. So this is important why you got to read through this, and didn't realize that he owed the buyer, his buyer's agent, $30,000 in commission. And so what happened was they raised the loan amount to free up $30,000. And so it ended up raising his monthly payment by $250 a month, but it was better than just forking over an additional $30,000 to his agent. I heard that. I was like, oh my God, is that what we're going to have to be dealing with?
Well, so what I think will happen, and this is what I'm excited about, is I think there's going to be, like I said, a leveling up. When you would have a listing appointment or when you would go to a seller who's considering listing their house, you would generally go to an appointment and have a meeting and present, here's what I'm going to do. Here's my marketing. Here's my experience. Here's how I'm going to negotiate for you. Here's how we're going to put it on the market. And here's what I'm going to charge for all of that, combined.
Yep.
And that was a relatively standard practice. Sellers aren't going to just sign a listing agreement willy-nilly. Well, buyers, especially buyer agents, and this is where we got in trouble as an industry. There was a significant amount of buyer agents that were suggesting that, hey, my service is free. It doesn't cost you anything. Well, obviously, we all know that that's not true because the way that they pay for their services by the purchase price of the home. So while, yes, the buyer is not writing a check generally to that buyer agent, they did just write a
That's an important distinction right there, because it's hey, you can get a buyer's agent. It's not going to cost you anything. You're just paying for it on the price.
So there was no need or fear of signing any documents as a buyer because the kind of suggestion was, hey, my services are free. Well, now their services are absolutely not free and they're going to be negotiated throughout. And it needs to be more of a full-on buyer introduction meeting that's going to suggest, hey, we charge 2.8%, 2%, whatever that person decides, 6%. There could be absolutely agents like, dude, we spend $10,000 a month on marketing for our clients to do X, Y. I mean, dude, it could go all over the place. That's what I'm excited about is there's opportunities everywhere. And it's how can you differentiate yourself, your brokerage, to really take advantage of this opportunity, which is what we're seeing as the market, to differentiate yourself and stand above the crowd. Because I think one of the most there was articles out there that one of the least attractive industries was car salesmen, and then real estate agents were next.
And mortgage brokers were not too far behind, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it's you were a part of this group of people that were disdained and not liked because, well, the industry wasn't very much well performing. Yeah. I think the difference will be now there's going to be a much more professional atmosphere around it. And part of the change is this buyer brokerage compensation agreement. So before, I could grab a client and I could go show a property without having anything signed in Colorado. Other states are different, so we're just focusing on Colorado. But before, I could have grabbed a client, went and showed properties for weeks and showed and then upon negotiations, that's when you'd sign a buyer's agreement and say, hey, we're gonna go negotiate. But it was just really glossed over type deal. Mm-hmm. Now, before you can even show a home, you have a brokerage disclosure to buyer that will have this section all right here. This broker's compensation agreement is all new. Now, it's not tying you to this agent. So if you're watching this, make sure that you don't feel like, hey, am I signing this exclusive buyer agreement? No, what you're signing is I am allowing, Patrick to show me homes, and in return, I'm agreeing to pay 3% or a flat rate of whatever if we close on, one of these
if
homes.
You go under contract and close, you're saying, all right, Patrick, we're going to pay you $5,000 or whatever. Okay. Now, question for you, and this has come up in some classes. Do you need to have these signed for every home that you show somebody, or can you say, hey, this is for this weekend? All the homes that I show you this weekend. How does that work? Because
you're going to sign one agreement per person. And then at that point, now the thing that's interesting is a buyer could sign 10 of these with 10 different agents.
10 different agents. Okay.
And there could be some infighting if one, maybe he went and saw the same house with 2 agents. So there could be some interesting things that happen there. And that's where I think that over the next 6 months, we're going to see not significant maybe, but some like
we talked about it. So it'll be trial and error. You're going to see some one-offs. You're like, oh, don't go that route. Don't do that.
So I'm super interested. I think, even one of the things that I talked with a seller about, he wants to list his house next spring. And I'm like, dude, high level, here's what's going on. But the reality is the market's going to be super different between now and then. And we'll have to figure out kind of what's going on at that point. So we had like a 30-minute conversation. And at the end of it, I said, now everything that I just told you could mean absolutely nothing in 6 months.
I know. Well, and I'm as we wrap everything up, obviously interest rates, everybody wants to know what's going on with interest rates. Like we said, the Fed is going to be cutting in September. I think the meeting is September 17th and 18th, if I have those dates right. We're going to get a lot of calls from people saying, hey, what are mortgage rates on September 19th? Saying, hey, did they just drop a quarter point or a half a point? And remember, the Fed cutting rates they're cutting the short-term rates. So if you have a HELOC that has an adjustable rate, that will go down the next day. If you are looking for a business loan, short-term business, those rates will drop. The mortgage rates follow the bond market, and the bond market is already starting to tell us, what's going to happen. And so mortgage rates have started to come down. I can tell you right now, what we're seeing with our investors is conventional loans are in the mid to low 6s. Government loans, which are FHA and VA loans, are in the mid to high 5s. They've already come down over the last couple of weeks. Now, they did do a little bounce around in the last couple of weeks when we had the yen carry trade scare and everything like that. You did see a weakening jobs report. But anyways, with all that being said, the bond market is what dictates mortgage rates. And because that tells them how much they make on the back end. Not to get too much in the weeds here, but I do think, heck, we were knocking on 8%, 7.75%, a year ago. A little less than a year ago. So
October 23. That was
October 23 when it peaked. So I do think rates are coming down, but they might be coming down as the economy's slowing, but unfortunately, that's kind of what was going to happen. So, Patrick,
I think affordability is a huge question for people. I think it'll be interesting over the next months.
If you go back and listen to the episode we did with Yimby, Yes in My Backyard, and the affordable housing, and it was a good conversation, but I couldn't help but play devil's advocate the entire time and go, it's an uphill battle you're fighting in Fort Collins. And it's just a tough one to win, especially for a place like Northern Colorado where everybody wants to move and people have high paying jobs. They're educated. You have a good university. You can go all the way down the list. And it's a tough battle. So I don't know what the answer is, but it'll be interesting to see how everything kind of unfolds. So
maybe one of our future guests, like Ann Hutchison, will help.
Yes, I think Ann will be great. And quite frankly, I want to know what's on the ballot, what's important. And that'll be a great episode coming up here in October. So,
All right. Well, everybody, pay attention. It'll be a wild ride over the next fall on Christmas. And Chris, you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Friends of the podcast, thank you so much as always for tuning in. We thank you so much for your support. And just so you know, my amazing co-host Patrick Soukup over there, he is the founder, started Soukup Real Estate. If you ever need any questions about buying or selling or just want a market report on your existing home, reach out to Patrick. His team is absolutely fantastic. Born and raised in Fort Collins. His information is right there on the page. Strongly recommend reaching out.
And same for you, Chris. As if you guys are looking at buying or refinancing a home here in Northern Colorado, there's nobody better to reach out to than the Murphy Whitlock Group. And Chris Murphy is going to take incredible care of you. So do not hesitate to reach out, ask questions. He is in no rush, no hurry. So give him a chance. And I think he's going to do a great job for you. Thank you for watching.